Wafube. Peace and blessings. This is Misal Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, and we're coming back with another episode of the OG Den with historian Keenan Booker is in the house, and we're reviewing his 3-volume series, Kicked Out of Heaven. And this is a dynamic series. You have to read it. It talks about medieval history, a lot of the plagues that went on, and even the fringes and origins of supernatural phenomena. And we've been hitting on it in previous episodes, but before we begin, we'd like to ask you to push the like button and subscribe to the channel. Today we'll be talking about vampires, and that's probably going to be a topic that will stretch over probably like 2 to 3 episodes. I want to get, Brother Keenan Booker, the God 720, has a lot of insights on that subject. So let's give him the floor, say hello, and we'll get things started. I'm going to throw out a couple of questions, and we'll get this party roasted. So in your opinion, how would you define a vampire?
Well, there's different types. Everything has a multitude of different types.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are psychic energy vampires, which is a very real situation.
Mm-hmm.
That can be done in a lot of different formats.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at what an incubus or a succubus is, their true definition of the extraction of sexual secretion would also be a quasi form of vampire. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going off of the principle of taking an energy or something of the liquid matter from one being to you, okay, for whatever purpose you say, usually for some form of regeneration of life, right? So, vampires, human beings who are extremely pale and can't be in the sunlight directly, is correlated to some medical issues that are definitely have their causes with have their causes to the medical issues, like porphyria is one of them. Are similar to the environment of what was going on during medieval times.
Yeah.
So this disease makes the skin very thin. One can't be in sunlight. Their teeth grow into the shape of 2 hooks, and it's like 2 bat teeth. And the bat, who is the fruit bat, is, I think, specifically where they get the teeth dynamic from, and sucking of the blood.
Wow.
Looks real similar. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I want to kind of import a little bit of something into our discussion. Let me just pull this up. Hold on a second. I don't want to close the meeting, but let me see if I can pull this up. I think on one of the pages you actually had a picture of how the teeth looked, and I definitely want to kind of add a little bit of light.
Yeah, I do have pictures in the book of how the teeth look, and as a matter of fact, some metaphysics to show you how some metaphysics work. The pictures of the teeth that I do have in here are
Let me see if I can share my screen. Hold on, let me pull this up. Okay, there we go.
Right, they're from.
Yeah, you talking about these?
Yeah,
right
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, those teeth that comes from a medical condition called porphyria. It makes the teeth like that.
Wow.
And ergot is definitely a disease that causes that. Those 2 kids are from a family. I think the name of that family is the Cullen family. Was the name of the same family that's in the movie, that's in the TV show True Bloods. That's a vampire show.
Okay.
Yeah, the name of those two kids that's on
Wow.
there,
Yeah.
their last name, yeah, their last name is the same name that's used on the True Blood TV show.
Yes.
So
It's really interesting scrolling down, looking
yeah,
at
they know.
this. Not interesting in a attractive way, but it's just, you know, when you look over the complexity of human diseases and stuff like that, it's ridiculous.
Well, the amount of blood that they were used, especially when you look at how epilepsy and other ailments were the what's the word I'm the prophylactics
Hmm.
that they used, okay, the physic that they
Hmm.
used to heal these diseases had a lot to do with the mummy. And the mummy, the mumia, is basically decayed human, okay?
Hmm.
And this is what you see with the mummies in Egypt. A lot of them are no longer with us because they were used in medicine and they were used in paintings and things like that. But when it came to the medicine, there was a lot of blood being used in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
So that being mixed in with an imagery of individuals walking around with that medical condition, while the porphyra, and while you're also underneath the intoxication of lead poisoning, ergotism, syphilis,
Hmm.
typhus, um, alcoholism, all of these things mixed in with your everyday usage, and then also just the scent of the air was so strong it would alter the hallucination state of the mind.
Let's talk about that 1 second.
So
Was that from the environment, like the poisons that was in the atmosphere at that point? You would think from the human suffering.
right,
Hmm.
right. There's evidence that there's clear evidence that they knew the effects of a lot of these things and what the source was. But as is shown throughout time,
Hmm.
when you study history thoroughly, world history, you'll see that a lot of things are discovered, but they aren't really actually put into place until about 200, maybe 300 years afterwards. So
Wow.
when it came, yeah, so when it came to things like lead poisoning, which was lead acetate. Lead acetate was considered to be a sweetener, sugar.
Hmm.
It looked just like sugar,
Hmm.
and it was considered to be a sweetener for wine. And also, the cups were made out of lead. Plates were made out of lead. So there was no way, the way this society was designed, there was no way you could dodge lead poison. Okay.
Hmm.
So even when it comes to the painters dabbing the paint on their tongue and all of that, and the extreme pale look of Van Gogh and all of that. I mean, not Van Gogh, but Picasso, and him cutting off his ear and all of that other stuff. All of that stuff is effects of lead poisoning.
I
Okay,
see.
and we didn't know that's what we were looking at. You know,
Wow.
right? So there is a large, and that's just one. Syphilis makes
Hmm.
you insane a little bit too, and alters
Mm.
your thinking patterns. So there's a ton of different things that was going on that was altering the thought patterns that definitely could make hallucination at a 24/7 status.
Hmm.
And if we were to look at that and then include the imagery of not only seeing leprous individuals, but also to see people walking around with their nose cut off, their ears cut off, and things of that nature. And then with the overusage of blood being inside the medical practices, voila, a person who has the porphyra is going to fall into the
Hmm.
imagination space of a bloodsucker, okay, of a
Oh.
human being that sucks blood. It comes off blood, right? That's why I compiled the book the way I did.
Hmm.
That's why that volume 2 is just phenomenal because I started you out with the vices of hallucinations so you can understand each one of these elements and how they're affecting their mind first, before we go into the zones that are explaining other worlds, which may be a bounce back effect of the hallucinations. Now, the details, you see, now the details of these other worlds and how they access in our world or built the spiritual concrete stereotypes for us to survive off of now, that was done in this twilight zone. Okay. Now, people don't really know what the twilight zone is. I want to talk about that real quick because it
Sure,
seems
definitely. Yeah.
right. The twilight zone and also the Fortnite, the word that they use for the game. I can't be too descriptive on a Fortnite right now, but I think the Fortnite is the layer in between the layer. So when you have night and day, you have a little thin slice in between that night and day. It's a little thin slice right here. This little thin slice zone is called the twilight zone. Right.
Okay.
That's called the twilight zone. Right. The little space in between the light and the dark. Okay. Yeah. So that's where the insanity crosses. That's where the bridge meets. That's where, things go completely awry and nothing's able to be attained, attained or caught or, held on to. It's all blah, 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 blah,
Yeah. What's interesting about that is during that time in a typical 24-hour day is when the morning star is most visible, is at that time of the twilight, which, the morning star is I guess the term for it is the Greek term is Luciferos, where you get the term light bringer or Lucifer. So it's kind of interesting that that phenomenon goes on during the time that this star is the brightest in the sky, for those who are spiritualists to add on to that. So what is one of the things before we get back into the jump seat? There was something else that you had mentioned about sexual vampirism I thought was interesting because years back I remember reading a book called The White Tigress, and it was about I think the author was Cy Lee, and he spoke about the guy who was 18. He went to go out to get a blowjob, and he met this lady, and the lady was beautiful, and he just had a time where he just had a spiritual awakening in the essence of what was going on. He was going to this brothel. This was in China. So he goes back a couple of weeks later, and he's looking for the woman. He says, "Yeah, the 18-year-old girl." And so they're like, "Nah, that girl ain't 18. She's 65." And so he discovers this art of sexual vampirism. So I thought that was kind of interesting that you mentioned about that. But why do you think, in today's world, people are fascinated with the vampire? There is the power of the vampire. Why do you think people are fascinated with that today?
It's the same fascination as Silence of the Lambs. It is this. It is this. It is the conscious killer. Right.
Wow.
The one. Yeah, you see, like a werewolf is an unconscious killer.
Oh, I see. I see. So I guess there is some sort of G power with the vampire. I guess as he's
right. The vampire has no violence in introduction. The zombie, the werewolf are violent at introduction. The undead, they are violent at introduction. So we have to say that the bloodsucker of the vampire definitely takes on more of the human shape and responsibility in the lines of communication. So he has mastered the areas of manipulation and seduction, and most definitely so because of his age. As they say, vampires do not age, right?
Right.
Right. And also, they don't see themselves in the mirror. The science of you not seeing yourselves in the mirror is you not seeing the pain that you inflict on others.
Mm-hmm.
As that pain that you inflict on others may be what you need for survival. As a lion taking down a giraffe,
Mm-hmm.
it is the same thing. You have to be completely numb and void of all care to extract life or to cause harm and project violence on somebody who is of your own species, breed, whatever the case.
Yeah.
Especially that's one of our common courtesy laws as humans, in which the vampire carries himself to abide by all common courtesy laws as he appears as a gentleman, correct?
Yes.
He's always right. And another thing about the vampire is the suit. He wears the business suit, which is the symbol of death, as that is the suit that you wear in your casket right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right. And that is also the suit.
Yeah, it's wild, some of the
Yeah,
customs that
bro.
we have. Yeah, it's crazy.
Bro,
That's
these
what,
scientists are heavy. These
yeah.
scientists are
Yeah,
heavy,
so
brother.
volume two definitely has a dark tinge of real history. It's not even a tint, it's just real history that's a little bit dark, you know what I'm saying?
What
I,
you
I
can
can
feel? Hold on. Let me ask you:
uh
are you feeling that? You feel the reality of that, of the essence of it, with the physical book in your hand? Huh?
oh yeah, definitely. That's when I started looking into certain sciences that were shadow sciences, just not being motivated in that direction, but just more or less seeing the certain realness behind the veil. Let me just say it like that, because that definitely was like, wow, looking through volume two, man. When you got the books in your hand, it definitely takes you on a whole different journey. You know what I'm saying? That's good because you really get to see the fabric of the world. You don't want to be blind to that. But I think for some people not so far gone, it is definitely um, something that is really mind blowing. You know what I'm saying? When you look at the facts, see, I can understand in some ways today's reality. They try to make playpens out of these characters like werewolves and vampires and stuff like that. But when you really find out the origin of these things, that they may actually come from certain psychological states, supernatural states, or even some of the physical uh, characteristics that were actually real that we don't really see commonly today that associated with those things, man. It's totally like, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Because that world.
Well, I mean, to be honest, when you understand time
Hmm.
and when you understand, uh, you know, the possibilities of age,
Hmm.
you can definitely throw in the fact that there's a large possibility the majority of people don't know what they're doing. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know that they're supporting and keeping a lot of ancient rituals in place. And even if there are some people out here who do, over time, there was far more people in the past who were gatekeepers to these things.
Mm.
Over time, right, the synthetic world has destroyed or I can't say destroyed because it could never destroy, but it is definitely battling the
Mm.
natural law of things.
Mm.
So the arts that are carried from father to son are interrupted by technology.
Mm.
And this will leave the son to evolve into a vampire that has no seduction arts. When you are a vampire that has no seduction arts,
Hmm.
you, in essence, are a zombie, the undead.
Mm.
You know, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's
still
deep.
in human form, right? And that's what they're trying to make us do today with
Hmm.
the lack of communication of the woman, because you have to understand that the natural aspect of taking is how we live. And that's how humans have always been with each other. For a woman, she must feel taken, the
Mm-hmm.
grasping of the breath, the deep inhale, the taking my breath away. The science of taking my breath away is actually talking about the restrictions of the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And the restrictions of the lungs have been recorded even all the way in ancient Egypt, that love restricts your air. Love is actually uh, damaging biologically. When
Wow.
you, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a there was a one time I kept reading about this word romanticism. I was like, man, what is this? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm thinking of the just the romantic expression how we use it today, and then I discovered that there was this whole philosophy about romanticism, that carried on a dialogue for a minute because some people thought it was a form of possession, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, it was really, really kind of interesting. But hearing you say that now with the physical aspects, it's like, wow, that stuff is pretty deep. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, recently I've discovered new information
Hmm.
that is really the deepest and darkest secret of mankind. I will
Hmm.
say that. I've discovered some information that is darker and older than Adam and Eve or any caveman. I'm talking about the origin of existence, and I
Yeah.
can't really speak on it
Expound on it.
publicly.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get the
Yeah,
book
yeah,
though.
but I will. Well, yeah, I've already. Me and you went over it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But
Yeah.
basically, um, all of this stuff is built around that.
Yeah.
So even the vampire sucking on the nerve and sucking on the major jugular vein and being
Hmm.
attached to the nervous system, you
Yeah.
see, the extraction of the blood is the extraction of life. The gasping of the air when the Dracula holds her, or when she's, or when he leaves out through the window and the window's blowing, she's
Yeah.
all of that. That is right, an element of taking, because you have to understand that the sexual act is actually a form of human sacrifice at the same time.
Hmm.
See, human sacrifice is uh, collecting the soul, right? And that's what you're doing when you're having sex with a woman.
Hmm.
You are literally inside her soul
Hmm.
in the unison format, right? So you're extracting her soul out when you're
Hmm.
having sex. And this is also found in the sexual secretions. So this is a symbology level that's also being shown with uh, the Dracula and the vampire. And this is also based on the bottom line that everything is dark natured.
Hmm.
Hence, where the location of sexual activity being, whether that be in a dark room, is dark inside the body, and
Hmm.
that's where the unisons are really occurring. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Right.
Some deep stuff there, man. Yeah. So, wow, that's very insightful, man. We got to come back on this topic of the vampire again, brother. You know what I'm saying? We're going to do this shortly, too, because um, we got to keep afloat with this topic. And I have a lot more questions I want to ask. But since the subject is so deep, um, I definitely want to give the audience some time to contemplate and to review the video, maybe even look up some references. You mentioned a couple of diseases with the outbreak of teeth and stuff like that, and and go out there and get you know uh, the volumes. Go out there and
Yeah,
get
you
the
got to
books.
get the 3 volumes.
Yeah,
Get them from me. The link, you got to go to keenanbooker.com.
yeah,
I can send them to you. They'll be here shortly. I'm taking all the pre-orders right now. They'll be to you at your home
yeah,
before the end of the month. You better get them because I got some very serious stuff going on, and you want to have a fire Christmas gift.
yeah.
And
Kicked
with all
out
the
of
Black
heaven.
Lives Matter, yeah.
Kicked Out of Heaven by Keenan Booker. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to be back shortly with part two of the Vampire series. And this is something really exciting. And it's definitely going to be an amazing experience. But get Kicked Out of Heaven the 3-volume set by Keenan Booker. He's an excellent author, and he's got some real bullet points of information in there that you need to know to understand largely the world that you're living in and to also understand yourself. This is Misal Bay,
Right.
aka Warlock Asylum, with historian Keenan Booker, and we're going to be back shortly. And for now, have a good night.